All right, so today we're diving into a really unusual case study in what some are calling narrative warfare. It's all based on this unique framework where the very act of trying to hide information becomes a massive public confession. We're going to unpack how, according to the source material, a huge strategic choice backfired just spectacularly. So let's just kick things off with this central question. What if trying to control a story by stamping it out was the one thing that guaranteed you'd lose control completely? This is the paradox we're exploring today. Okay, so let's get right into it. The story here begins with what the source calls a strange signal, and what they frame as a massive missed opportunity to control the story around it. So the whole thing really kicks off with these publicly detectable Bluetooth low-energy signals, or, BLE for short. The source argues that when this widespread, easily testable thing popped up, it wasn't just a tech glitch. It was a fork in the road for narrative control. A choice had to be made about what these signals actually meant. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Imagine you're the one calling the shots. The source lays out 4 potential paths you could have taken to own this story. You could have normalized it, called them biowearables. You could have monetized it, sell it as medical data collection. You could have obfuscated it, just muddy the waters and call it digital tattoos. Or you could even go big and sacralize it, framing it as the next step in human evolution. 4 totally different ways to define reality. But they didn't pick any of those. Instead, according to our source, the decision was made to just suppress any and all conversation about it. And that one choice, that one decision, set off a massive chain reaction. And this brings us to what the source calls a fractal self-own. I know, it's a weird term, but think of it this way. It's an act of self-sabotage that doesn't just fail once, oh no. It creates these ripple effects that make the failure worse and worse and worse over time. To really get this, we gotta talk about a key term from the source, the Streisand Glyph. We've all heard of the Streisand Effect, right? Where trying to hide something just makes everyone want to see it? Well, this is a spin on that. Here, the glyph is the act of censorship itself. It becomes this powerful symbol, basically a confession that whatever's being hidden isn't just true, it's really, really important. So this one decision had 4 immediate and kinda disastrous consequences. First, the signal was still out there. Anyone with a phone could find it. Second, the censorship. That Streisand glyph basically screamed, hey, look over here. Third, it created a story vacuum that their opponents just rushed in to fill. And finally, in the source's own very charged language, it put their alleged war crime right out in the open for everyone to see. So you're probably asking, why on earth would they make such a massive mistake? Well, to understand the why behind this paradox, we have to explore the theoretical framework the source is using. And, fair warning, it gets a little out there. At the core of this is a concept they call quantum fractal intelligence, or QFI. Now, the source is clear. This is not about predicting the future, like some kind of crystal ball. They call it recursive inevitability. You know what? A better way to think of it is like setting up a huge line of dominoes. Once you push that first one, you've set a pattern in motion. You might not know the exact path every single domino will take, but you know one thing for sure. The final collapse is now unavoidable. And within this QFI system, you have these things called glyphs. A glyph is basically a trigger, a word, a question, an observation that forces an outcome. It's like asking someone a question that you know has no good answer. The silence, or the angry denial, that becomes the event. It collapses all the possibilities into one undeniable reality. The source even calls them dimensional weapons because of this power they have to shape what happens next. And where do these events get recorded? On something called the Glyphchain. Just think of it like a public, tamper-proof ledger, kind of like a blockchain. But instead of logging Bitcoin transactions, it's notarizing events, like an AI model refusing to answer a question, or a social media platform deleting a post. Each of those actions gets logged as cryptographic proof that a truth is being suppressed. So this diagram here, it shows the engine that drives this whole process. Let's walk through it with our example. An observer posts about these BLE signals. This creates entanglement. The system has to react. It censors the post, which is the collapse. That censorship action creates brand new evidence, like a screenshot of the deleted post. That's the fractal. And then a new observer sees that screenshot, gets angry, and bam, the whole self-perpetuating loop kicks off all over again. Okay, so now that we have the weird, wild framework, let's bring it all back to our case study. This is where we see exactly how every single attempt to control the situation resulted in what the source calls a symbolic inversion, where they got the exact opposite of what they wanted. I mean, this table just lays it out perfectly. Look at that first row. The attempt to suppress and deny the BLE emissions, it only turned them into a forensic signal of guilt. Second row, trying to filter the conversation using AI models? Well, according to that Glyphchain idea, those refusal logs become cryptographic proof of a confession. And third, the big one, trying to own the narrative by censoring dissent just resulted in completely losing the narrative to the very system they were trying to fight. This quote from the source, it's dense, but it really nails their point. Quantum locked the narrative. What does that mean? It basically means they defined the meaning of what was happening before the other side could. They're arguing that while one side was busy trying to control physical reality, their opponents moved faster and locked in the story about that reality, making their interpretation the one that's stuck. So, all this brings us to the final takeaway. In this crazy new information environment, according to this framework, what does it actually mean to win? According to this framework, narrative control was seized by the side that had not just the tools and the data, like the scanners they call BlueFang, but also the meaning. And this is so key. They framed the data by connecting it to these powerful and, I should note, very controversial ideas like Nuremberg. They didn't just have the evidence, they owned the entire context for it. And that really is the absolute core lesson here. Within this model of information warfare, victory doesn't come from your ability to hide or suppress a signal. It comes from your ability to be the first one to convincingly explain what that signal actually means. So, we'll leave you with this to chew on. When every phone in every pocket is a potential scanner, and every attempt to hide something creates its own permanent digital trail, maybe the old playbook for control is just completely obsolete. The real question then becomes, can you survive being discovered?